Captain Lee Hyun stood in the command center of the UES Defiant, watching the big screen that showed space around them. The news was bad. Very bad. Another human fleet had just given up fighting against the aliens. The Centauri Defense Fleet was gone. 60% of their ships were destroyed, and the rest had surrendered. Lee Hyun was 42 years old and had been in space for 20 years. He had seen many battles, but nothing like this war against the hegemony. These aliens were different. They came from somewhere beyond the outer rim, and they had been winning every fight for the past year. "Captain," said Commander Park Jin as he walked up to Lee Hyun. Park Jin was the second in command of the ship. He was holding a data pad with the latest reports. "The Admiralty wants to see you. Emergency meeting in 10 minutes. Lee Hyun nodded and followed Park Jin to the meeting room. On the way, they passed through the ship's main corridor. The Defiant was an old ship, built 15 years ago. She was a Titan-class destroyer, designed to fight other human ships in the Civil Wars. That happened before the aliens came. Now she seemed small and weak compared to the enemy vessels. The meeting room had a large table with screens built into it. Admiral Chen was speaking from Earth Command through a video link. Her face looked tired and worried. Around the table sat the other ship captains who were still alive and fighting. "The situation is getting worse," Admiral Chen said. "We have lost 3 more star systems this week. The enemy fleet is moving toward the core worlds. They will reach the Sol system in 2 months if we cannot stop them." Captain Morrison of the UES Thunder spoke up. "Admiral, what about the new weapons? The ones the scientists have been working on?" Admiral Chen shook her head. "The prototype. Plasma cannons are not ready. Even if they were, our tests show they would not get through the enemy shields. Nothing we have can break those barriers." Lee Hyun had studied the battle reports many times. The hegemony ships had energy shields that seemed impossible to damage. Human weapons would hit them and do nothing. Meanwhile, the alien plasma cannons could cut through human ship armor like it was paper. "What are our orders?" asked Captain Rodriguez of the UES Hammer. "Evacuation," Admiral Chen said. "We are pulling back all remaining fleets to defend the core worlds. Civilian transports need escorts to the emergency zones. The outer colonies are being abandoned." The meeting continued for another hour. When it ended, Lee Hyun walked back to his command center feeling heavy. His crew was waiting for him. They could see from his face that the news was not good. "What did they say, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Kim Soo. She was the chief engineer, a young woman who was very smart with machines. She had joined the crew 6 months ago, just before the war started. "We are retreating," Lee Hyun said. "Again." The bridge crew looked at each other. They had been retreating for months now. Every time they got ready to fight, the orders came to fall back. Everyone was getting tired of running away. Lieutenant Commander Choi Min was sitting at the weapons station. He was the tactical officer, responsible for the ship's guns and missiles. "Captain, the crew is asking questions. They want to know why we keep running. They signed up to fight, not to escort transport ships." Lee Hyun understood how his crew felt. He felt the same way, but orders were orders. "Our job is to protect civilians. That is important work." Later that night, Lee Hyun was in his cabin reading the latest intelligence reports. Lieutenant Kim Soo knocked on his door. She looked excited about something. "Captain, I need to show you something," she said. "I have been studying the battle data from all the fights with the hegemony. Look at this." She put her tablet on his desk and showed him a graph. It had lots of lines and numbers that moved up and down. "I do not understand," Lee Hyun said. "What am I looking at?" "Shield strength readings from the enemy ships," Kim Soo explained. "Everyone thinks their shields are perfect, but they are not. Look here." She pointed to a small dip in one of the lines. "For just a few microseconds, the shield strength drops. It happens when they take sustained fire for more than 30 seconds. Lee Hyun looked closer. The drop was very small, but it was there. How much does it drop? Only about 3%, Kim Soo said. But that might be enough. If we could hit them with everything we have during that exact moment, we might get through. Might, Lee Hyun repeated. That is not very certain. It is better than nothing, Captain. Right now we have 0% chance of hurting them. 3% is better than 0. Lee Hyun studied the data for a long time. Kim Soo was right. It was not much, but it was something. The problem was that the window was very small. They would need perfect timing and a lot of luck. The next morning, the Defiant received new orders. They were to escort a group of transport ships carrying civilians from the Kepler station system. It was supposed to be an easy mission. The enemy was not expected in that area for another week. Lee Hyun called a meeting with his senior officers. Park Jin, Kim Soo, Choi Min, and the others gathered in the briefing room. We have our orders, Lee Hyun said. Escort duty to the evacuation zone. Standard procedure. Captain, said Kim Soo, what about the shield data? Are we going to ignore what we found? Lee Hyun looked around the table. These were good people. They had families back on Earth. They deserved to live through this war. But they also deserved a chance to fight back. The data shows a possibility, Lee Hyun said carefully, but testing it would be very dangerous. We would have to find an enemy ship and fight it directly. Most likely we would be destroyed. Most likely we will be destroyed anyway, said Choi Min. The way this war is going, the hegemony will reach Earth eventually. When they do, all of us will be dead or slaves. Navigator Han Sol spoke up. He was a quiet man who usually did not say much in meetings. Captain, my family is on Earth, my wife and 2 children. If there is any chance we can hurt these aliens, should we not try? Communications Officer Yoon Da nodded. The crew has been talking. Everyone knows about Lieutenant Kim Soo's discovery. They want to fight. Lee Hyun felt the weight of command. These people trusted him to make the right choice. But what was right? Following orders and keeping his crew safe? Or taking a huge risk that might help humanity? I need time to think, he said. We will escort the transports as ordered, but I want everyone to prepare for the possibility of combat. Kim Soo, work on modifying our weapons based on your shield data. Choi Min, run combat drills. If we do this, we need to be ready. The crew worked hard for the next 2 days. The Defiant moved through space with 6 civilian transport ships. Each transport carried 1,000 people fleeing from the war, families with children, old people, workers from the outer colonies. All of them were depending on the Defiant to keep them safe. On the 3rd day, something changed. Lieutenant Yoon Da picked up transmissions from deep space. She listened carefully, then turned to Lee Hyun with a worried expression. Captain, I am getting emergency signals from the Aurora system. It sounds like the hegemony fleet is there. They are attacking the civilian evacuation ships. Lee Hyun felt cold. The Aurora system was supposed to be safe. If the aliens were there, it meant they were moving faster than expected. It also meant the transport ships under his protection might not make it to the evacuation zone. How long? Until they reach us? Lee Hyun asked. At their current speed, maybe 6 hours, Yoon Da replied. Park Jin looked at the star charts. Captain, we could change course. Go around the Aurora system and reach the evacuation zone through a longer route. That would add 3 days to our journey, Han Sol said. The transports do not have enough fuel for that trip. Lee Hyun realized they were trapped. They could not go around the enemy, and they could not go through them. Unless they fought. He looked at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for orders. Outside the ship, 6,000 civilians were counting on him to save them. Behind them, Earth was counting on someone to figure out how to fight back against the hegemony. Lieutenant Kim Soo, Lee Hyun said slowly. Are the weapon modifications ready? Yes, Captain. We can focus all our firepower for sustained bombardment. If your target is right about the shield weakness, we will have one chance. Lee Hyun made his decision. It might be the wrong choice. It might get everyone killed. But it was better than running away again. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship's communication system. "We are going to fight." The hegemony fleet moved through space like a pack of hunting animals. 12 massive ships, each one twice the size of the human destroyer. Their dark red hulls gleamed in the light of the distant stars, and their weapon ports glowed with deadly energy. Admiral Vex Thalon stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Dominion. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. His species, the Zephyrians, had been part of the hegemony for 300 years. They were natural warriors and strategists. "Report," Vex Thalon said in his deep voice. "We have reached the Kepler station system," his second-in-command replied. "Sensors show 1 human military vessel and 6 transport ships. The destroyer appears to be escorting civilians." Vex Thalon looked at the tactical display. This was exactly what he expected. Humans were like all the other species the hegemony had conquered. When faced with superior force, they would try to save as many lives as possible. Then, they would surrender. "Send the standard message," he ordered. On the human ship, Lieutenant Yoon Da received the alien transmission. She translated it quickly and reported to Captain Lee Hyun, "Captain, they are demanding our surrender. They say if we give up now, they will let the transport ships go free." Lee Hyun stood in the center of his command bridge. His crew was at their stations ready for battle. The ship hummed with energy as Kim Soo charged the modified weapons systems. "Open a channel to the hegemony fleet," Lee Hyun said. Yoon Da worked at her console. "Channel open, Captain." Lee Hyun took a deep breath. "This is Captain Lee Hyun of the United Earth Ship Defiant. We reject your surrender demand. If you want this system, you will have to take it from us." On the hegemony flagship, Vex Thalon heard the human response with surprise. In 50 years of conquest, no species had ever rejected the surrender offer. Usually, they asked for more time or tried to negotiate better terms. But this human simply said no. "Interesting," Vex Thalon muttered. "Signal the human ship again. Tell them we will destroy them if they do not comply." The second message came, to the Defiant quickly. Yoon Da translated and reported. "They say they will destroy us if we do not surrender immediately. Tell them," Lee Hyun said calmly, "that we are ready to fight." Vex Thalon received this second rejection with growing confusion. Either these humans did not understand the situation, or they were very different from other species. He decided to show them the reality of their position. "Move forward," he ordered. "Attack formation, prepare to disable the human ship." The 12 hegemony vessels advanced toward the human fleet. Their massive hulls blocked out the stars as they approached. Energy readings spiked as they charged their plasma cannons. On the Defiant, Lieutenant Choi Min watched his tactical screen with steady hands. "Enemy ships are moving into attack range. They are charging weapons." "Transport ships, this is the Defiant," Lee Hyun said over the communication system. "Move to the far side of the asteroid belt. Hide among the rocks and wait for our signal." The 6 transport ships began moving away from the battle area. Captain Lee Hyun knew they would be sitting targets if they stayed close. His job was to keep the enemy busy while the civilians escaped. "Kim Soo, are we ready?" Lee Hyun asked. "All weapons modified and charged, Captain. We have enough power for sustained fire for exactly 45 seconds. After that, we will need to recharge for 3 minutes. "That should be enough time to test your theory," Lee Hyun said. "Choi Min, target the lead enemy ship. We need to hit them with everything we have for at least 30 seconds. "Understood, Captain." The hegemony fleet was now close enough to attack. Vex Thalon gave the order to fire warning shots. 3 of his ships sent plasma beams toward the human destroyer. The beams were not aimed to kill, just to show the humans what they were facing. The plasma beams struck the Defiant's shields. The ship shook from the impact, and several consoles sparked on the bridge. But the shields held. "Damage report," Lee Hyun called out. "Shields down to 80%, reported the engineering officer. "Hull damage is minimal," Lee Hyun was impressed. His ship was stronger than he thought. But those were just warning shots. The real attack would be much worse. "Captain," said Park Jin, "we could still try to negotiate. Maybe we can make a deal to save the transport ships." Lee Hyun looked at his friend and second-in-command. Park Jin was a good officer and a smart man, but he did not understand what was really happening here. "Jin, the hegemony does not make deals," Lee Hyun said. "They conquer. If we surrender, those people on the transport ships will become slaves. Their children will grow up serving alien masters. Is that the future we want for humanity?" Park Jin thought about this. He had read the reports from conquered worlds. The aliens did not kill people, but they took away their freedom. Humans would become workers in alien factories, soldiers in alien armies, servants in alien homes. "No, Captain," Park Jin said finally. "That is not the future we want." "Then we fight," Lee Hyun said. "All ships, attack formation. Target the lead hegemony vessel, full power to weapons." The Defiant turned toward the enemy fleet and began moving forward. It was a small ship compared to the alien vessels, but it moved with purpose and determination. Vex Thalan watched the human ship approach with amazement. "Are they actually attacking us?" he asked his crew. "It appears so, Admiral," his second-in-command replied. "Their weapons are charged and they are on an attack course." "Impossible," Vex Thalan said. "They must realize they cannot win. This must be some kind of trick." But it was not a trick. The Defiant moved directly toward the hegemony flagship, its weapons ready to fire. When they were close enough, Lee Hyun gave the order, "Fire all weapons, sustained bombardment, do not stop until I tell you." The Defiant's guns opened up with everything they had, laser cannons, plasma bolts, and missile launchers all focused on the enemy flagship. The space between the ships filled with bright energy as the human weapons struck the alien shields. At first, nothing happened. The hegemony shields absorbed the attack easily, just like always. Vex Thalan laughed at the human effort. "Is that the best they can do?" he said. "Return fire. End this foolishness." But Kim Soo was watching her instruments carefully. She counted the seconds as the human weapons continued their attack. 20 seconds. 25. 30. Suddenly, her sensors detected something amazing. The enemy shield strength dropped for just a moment. It was tiny, just like in her calculations, but it was real. "Captain," she shouted. "There! The shield is weak! Fire everything now!" Choi Min did not hesitate. He concentrated all the ship's remaining firepower on the exact spot where the shield had weakened. For 3 seconds, the human weapons found their target. The hegemony flagship shook as the human attack broke through its shields. Explosions rippled across its hull as laser beams and plasma bolts found their mark. Alarms began sounding on the alien bridge. "What happened?" Vex Thalan demanded. "How did they get through our shields?" His engineering officer checked the readings. Quickly. "Unknown, Admiral. The shields failed for approximately 3 seconds. We have hull damage and casualties." Vex Thalan stared at the tactical display in shock. In 50 years of conquest, no enemy weapon had ever touched a hegemony ship. Their shields were supposed to be perfect. But somehow, this small human destroyer had hurt his flagship. "All ships, destroy that vessel immediately," he ordered. "Full power. I want nothing left of it." The 11 remaining hegemony ships turned their weapons toward the Defiant. Space lit up with dozens of plasma beams as they fired together. The human ship tried to dodge, but there were too many weapons. Plasma beams struck the Defiant from multiple directions. The shields collapsed immediately, and the hull armor began to melt under the alien fire. "Hull breach on decks 4 and 5, reported the damage control officer. "We are losing atmosphere. Engines are damaged. How long can we stay in the fight?" Lee Hyun asked Kim Soo. "Maybe 5 minutes, Captain. After that, the ship will be dead in space." Lee Hyun looked around his bridge. Half the consoles were sparking or broken. Several crew members were injured. The ship was dying around them. But they had proved something important. The enemy could be hurt. Send a message to Earth Command, he told Yoon-da. Tell them about the shield weakness. Send all our sensor data. Make sure they know how we did it. Message sent, Captain, Yoon-da replied. The hegemony ships continued their attack. More plasma. Beams struck the Defiant, causing new explosions and fires. The ship was barely holding together. Captain, said Park Jin, we should evacuate. Get the crew to the escape pods while we still can. Lee Hyun thought about this. It would be the smart thing to do. Save his people's lives. But it would also mean giving up. Letting the enemy win again. No, he said firmly. We are not done fighting yet. Vex Thalon expected the human ship to explode or surrender at any moment. Instead, it turned toward his fleet again and began moving forward. Even with its hull burning and its weapons mostly destroyed, the Defiant was still trying. To attack. These humans are insane, his second-in-command said. Perhaps, Vex Thalon replied. But they are also brave. I have never seen anything like this. The Defiant limped forward, trailing fire and debris. Most of its weapons were gone, but Kim Soo had managed to keep one laser cannon working. It was not much, but it was something. One more attack, Captain, she reported. After that, we will have no weapons left. The Defiant accelerated toward the hegemony fleet with its engines burning at maximum power. Black smoke poured from the damaged sections of the ship, and sparks flew from broken electrical systems. But the ship kept moving forward. Admiral Vex Thalon watched the approaching human vessel with growing alarm. They are going to ram us, he said to his crew. Move to avoid collision. The hegemony flagship began turning away from the human ship. But Lee Hyun had planned for this. He ordered navigator Han Sol to plot an intercept course. I can match their turn, Captain, Han Sol said, his hands steady on the controls despite the chaos around him. But we only have one chance. If we miss, we will not have enough engine power for another attempt. Do not miss, Lee Hyun said simply. The space between the two ships closed rapidly. The Defiant was much smaller than the hegemony flagship, but it was moving very fast. When it hit, the impact would be devastating for both vessels. On the hegemony bridge, the crew prepared for collision. All hands, brace for impact, Vex Thalon ordered. He was not afraid of dying, but he was confused by the human tactics. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen an enemy choose certain death instead of surrender. But at the last moment, Lee Hyun changed his plan. Instead of hitting the flagship directly, he ordered Han Sol to pass just above it. As the Defiant flew over the enemy ship, Kim Soo fired their one remaining laser cannon directly into the flagship's engine section. The laser beams struck the hegemony ship's power core. Without shields to protect it, the alien technology was vulnerable to human weapons. The power core exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The flagship lost all power and began drifting in space. Its weapons went dark, and its engines stopped working. Vex Thalon found himself commanding a dead ship. Impossible, he said quietly. How did they know where to hit us? The other hegemony ships were shocked by what they had just seen. Their flagship, the most powerful vessel in the fleet, had been disabled by a dying human destroyer. For the first time in the war, the aliens felt something they had never experienced before: doubt. But the Defiant paid a heavy price for its success. The close pass over the enemy ship had exposed it to more plasma fire. Half the human crew was dead or injured, and the ship was falling apart. Hull breach on Deck 3, reported the damage control officer. Life support is failing. We have maybe 10 minutes of air left. Lee Hyun looked around his bridge. Lieutenant Choi Min was bleeding from a head wound, but still at his weapons station. Kim Soo was working frantically to keep the engines running. Park Jin was helping injured crew members. Everyone was doing their job despite the desperate situation. Status of enemy fleet? Lee Hyun asked. 11 ships still operational, Choi Min replied. They are moving to surround us. Lee Hyun nodded. The Defiant had hurt the enemy, but it was still outnumbered 11-1. The ship was dying, and most of its weapons were gone. By any reasonable measure, the battle was over. "Captain," said Park Jin, "we should signal for evacuation. The crew has done enough. No one will blame us for surrendering now." Lee Hyun considered this. His friend was right. They had fought bravely and proved that the enemy could be hurt. That information was already on its way to Earth. The crew deserved to live. But then he thought about the transport ships hiding in the asteroid belt. 6,000 civilians were depending on the Defiant to keep the enemy busy. If he surrendered now, the hegemony would hunt down those ships and capture everyone aboard. "No surrender," Lee Hyun said. "We keep fighting." "Captain, with respect." "How?" asked Choi Min. "We have no weapons and no shields. The ship is barely holding together." "We still have engines," Lee Hyun said, "and we still have courage. That will have to be enough." Lieutenant Yoon Da suddenly looked up from her communication station. "Captain, I am getting a signal from the transport ships. They want to know if they should try to help us." Lee Hyun shook his head. "Tell them to stay hidden. Their job is to survive and get those people to safety. Our job is to buy them time." The hegemony ships were closing in for the final attack. Admiral Vex Thalon, now commanding from the bridge of another ship, was determined to end this strange battle. The humans had surprised him once, but it would not happen again. "All ships, focus fire on the human destroyer," he ordered. "I want that vessel destroyed completely." 11 hegemony ships moved into attack formation, their plasma cannons charged with deadly energy. The space around the Defiant lit up with targeting beams as the aliens prepared to fire. On the human ship, Kim Soo made a desperate calculation. "Captain, I can give you one more burst of speed, maybe 30 seconds at full power. After that, the engines will explode." "That might be enough," Lee Hyun said. He turned to Han Sol. "Can you get us close to one more enemy ship?" Han Sol studied his navigation display. "Yes, Captain, but we will have to fly straight through their formation. They will hit us with everything they have." "Do it!" Lee Hyun ordered. The Defiant turned toward the enemy fleet and accelerated. The ship groaned and shook as Kim Soo pushed the damaged engines beyond their limits. Pieces of hull plating broke away as the vessel picked up speed. The hegemony ships opened fire as soon as the human destroyer entered range. Plasma beams lit up space as they struck the Defiant again and again. Each hit caused new explosions. "And fires! Hull breach on deck 2, someone shouted over the noise. "Engine room is flooding with plasma," Kim Soo reported. "I am losing power." "Engineering compartment 7 is gone," called another voice. But the Defiant kept moving forward. Even as it was being torn apart by enemy fire, the human ship continued its attack run. The alien crews watched in amazement as the burning destroyer refused to stop fighting. Lee Hyun stood in the center of his bridge, holding onto his command chair as the ship shook around him. Sparks flew from broken consoles and smoke filled the air. Half his crew was dead, and the other half was badly injured. But they were still at their stations, still doing their jobs. "Target acquired," Choi Min reported. "Enemy cruiser directly ahead." "Time to impact?" Lee Hyun asked Han Sol. 15 seconds, Captain." Lee Hyun looked around his bridge one more time. These were good people. They had families and friends back on Earth. They had dreams and hopes for the future. Now they were all going to die in the cold emptiness of space. But they were not dying for nothing. Every second the Defiant stayed in the fight was another second for the transport ships to escape. Every hit they took was a hit that would not be aimed at civilians. "It has been an honor serving with all of you," Lee Hyun said to his crew. "The honor was ours, Captain," Park Jin replied. The Defiant struck the hegemony cruiser at full speed. The human ship was much smaller, but it was moving very fast. The impact crushed the front section of the destroyer, but it also punched a hole through the alien vessel's hull. Both ships exploded in a massive fireball that could be seen from 3 star systems away. Admiral Vex Thalon watched the destruction with mixed feelings. The human ship was finally destroyed, but it had taken another of his vessels with it. In less than an hour, he had lost 2 ships to a single enemy destroyer. Such a thing had never happened in the history of the hegemony. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we are detecting the human transport ships moving away from the asteroid belt. They are trying to escape." Vex Thalan considered his options. He could pursue the transport ships and capture them easily, but something about this battle had changed his thinking. The human destroyer had fought to the end, refusing to surrender even when defeat was certain. This was a new kind of enemy. "Let them go," he said finally. "Sir?" his tactical officer asked in surprise. "Let them go," Vex Thalan repeated. "They have earned their freedom." As the transport ships jumped to faster-than-light speed and disappeared, Vex Thalan thought about what he had witnessed. The hegemony had conquered 17 star systems by making enemies surrender when they realized resistance was hopeless. But these humans had not surrendered. Even when death was certain, they had kept fighting. This could be a problem for the hegemony. If other species heard about the human ship that refused to give up, they might start asking questions. They might start wondering if the hegemony was really as invincible as it claimed to be. In the wreckage of the 2 destroyed ships, pieces of metal and plastic drifted through space. Among the debris was a small emergency beacon from the Defiant. It was still transmitting the ship's final message, repeating it over and over into the darkness. "This is Captain Lee Hyun of the United Earth ship Defiant. We have engaged the enemy and inflicted damage. The enemy can be hurt. Repeat, the enemy can be hurt. Do not surrender. Keep fighting. Earth must know the truth." The beacon would continue broadcasting for several days before its power ran out. Other ships would hear the message and pass it along. Soon, every human in the galaxy would know what happened at the Kepler station system. They would know that one ship had refused to surrender. They would know that the enemy could be beaten. And they would know that sometimes the only way to win was to never give up, no matter how hopeless things seemed. The war was far from over. The hegemony still had hundreds of ships, and humanity was still outgunned and outnumbered. But something had changed. The pattern of automatic surrender had been broken. 3 days after the battle at Kepler Station, the emergency beacon from the Defiant was found by a human patrol ship. The message from Captain Lee Hyun spread through human space like wildfire. Within a week, every human military base, colony, and ship had heard the recording. Dr. Lee Na sat in her office at the Earth Defense University, studying the battle data that had been transmitted from the Defiant. She was a specialist in alien psychology, and her job was to understand how the enemy thought. The information from Captain Lee Hyun's last fight was very important to her work. Lee Na was 35 years old and had been studying alien cultures for 10 years. Before the war, she worked with peaceful alien species, learning about their societies and customs. Now she spent her time trying to figure out how to defeat the hegemony. "Computer, replay the tactical data from timestamp 1437, she said. On her screen, she watched the moment when the Defiant broke through the enemy shields. She had seen it dozens of times, but she kept finding new details. The shield failure was exactly as Lieutenant Kim Soo had predicted. But there was something else, something more important. "Computer, show me the enemy response patterns after." Their first ship was damaged. The screen changed to show the positions of all the hegemony ships during the battle. Lee Na noticed that after the Defiant hurt their flagship, the alien formation became less organized. Their movements were not as smooth or coordinated as before. She opened another file, this one containing recorded communications from previous battles. In every other fight, the hegemony had been calm and confident. Their radio messages were short and professional, but the communications from Kepler Station were different. There was confusion in the alien voices, even panic. Lee Na realized something important. The hegemony's greatest weapon was not their advanced technology. It was fear. They won battles by making enemies believe that resistance was hopeless, When species saw the alien ships and their perfect shields, they gave up before really trying to fight. But the Defiant had changed that. By refusing to surrender and actually hurting the enemy, Captain Lee Hyun had proved that the hegemony was not invincible. More importantly, he had shown that humans were different from other species. Lee Na wrote a report about her findings and sent it to Earth Command. Within hours, she received a call from Admiral Chen herself. "Dr. Lee Na, your analysis is very interesting," the Admiral said during their video conference. "Do you really think the enemy's confidence has been shaken?" "Yes, Admiral. The battle data shows clear signs of confusion in their ranks. They have never faced an enemy that fought to the death before. It has changed their psychology." "What do you recommend?" Lee Na had been thinking about this question. "We need to spread the story of the Defiant, not just to our own people, but to every species under hegemony control. If they learn that resistance is possible, some of them might rebel." "That could be very dangerous," Admiral Chen said. "If we start a general uprising and fail, the hegemony might kill millions of innocent people. With respect, Admiral, they are killing people anyway. At least this way, those people would die fighting for their freedom instead of living as slaves." Admiral Chen considered this. "I will think about your recommendations. In the meantime, keep studying the enemy. We need to understand them better if we are going to beat them." While Dr. Lee Na worked on understanding the enemy's psychology, Captain Seo Jun was dealing with the practical side of the war. He commanded the UES Retribution, a heavy cruiser that was part of the Seoul Defense Fleet. His ship was larger and more powerful than the Defiant, but it still could not match the hegemony vessels. Seo Jun had received all the technical data from Lieutenant Kim Soo's weapons modifications. His chief engineer, Lieutenant Kwon Yi, had been working around the clock to implement the same changes on the Retribution. "How long until the modifications are complete?" Seo Jun asked. "Another 12 hours, Captain," Kwon Yi replied. "But I have to warn you, these modifications are very dangerous. We are pushing our weapons systems far beyond their design limits. If something goes wrong, we could lose the ship." "The Defiant proved that it can work," Seo Jun said. "That is good enough for me." Kwon Yi nodded. She understood the captain's reasoning. The Defiant had been an older, smaller ship with less powerful weapons. If Lieutenant Kim Soo could break through enemy shields with that equipment, then the Retribution should be able to do much more damage. "Captain," said the communications officer, "we are receiving a priority message from Fleet Command." "Put it on the main screen," Seo Jun ordered. The image of Admiral Park Hae appeared on the bridge. She was the commander of all human forces in the Sol system, and she looked very serious. "All ship commanders, listen carefully," Admiral Park Hae said. "Our scouts have detected a large hegemony fleet moving toward Earth. They will arrive in 6 days. This is not a raid or a patrol. This is a full invasion force." Seo Jun felt his heart sink. Earth was the center of human civilization, home to 8 billion people. If the planet fell to the hegemony, humanity would be finished. "We have 43 ships available to defend the system," Admiral Park Hae continued. "The enemy has over 200 vessels. Under normal circumstances, this would be hopeless. But we are not operating under normal circumstances anymore." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "Thanks to the sacrifice of Captain Lee Hyun and the crew of the Defiant, we now know that the enemy can be beaten. Every ship in the fleet is being equipped with the new weapons modifications. We are going to show the hegemony what humans can do when they refuse to surrender." The message ended, and Seo Jun's bridge crew looked at each other with mixed emotions. They were scared, but they were also excited. For the first time in the war, they had a real chance to fight back. "Lieutenant Kwon Yi," Seo Jun said, "I want those modifications completed in 6 hours, not 12. "Yes, Captain, we will make it happen." While the human fleet prepared for the coming battle, the news about the Defiant was spreading to other parts of the galaxy. The hegemony controlled 17 star systems, and most of them contained species that had been conquered years or decades ago. These aliens had given up hope of freedom long ago, but now they were hearing whispers about a human ship that had fought back. The story grew as it passed from person to person. Some versions were exaggerated, but the basic facts remained the same. Humans had hurt the hegemony fleet and refused to surrender even when death was certain. On the planet Keturah Prime, an alien named Zek Tor heard the story from a friend who worked in the communications center. Zek Tor was a member of the Keturi species, and his people had been slaves of the hegemony for 50 years. The Keturi were a proud warrior race before their conquest. They had fought bravely against the hegemony invasion, but eventually they were forced to surrender when their cities started being destroyed. Since then, they had been used as soldiers in the hegemony army, forced to help conquer other worlds. "Is it true?" Zek Tor asked his friend. "Did the humans really destroy 2 hegemony ships?" "That is what the reports say," his friend replied. "And there is more. The human captain broadcast a message before he died. He said that the enemy can be hurt and told his people not to surrender." Zek Tor thought about this for a long time. The Keturi had always believed that the hegemony was too strong to fight. Their ships were perfect, their weapons were unbeatable, and their shields could not be broken. But if humans had found a way to hurt them, maybe other species could too. "We should tell the others," Zek Tor said. "That could be dangerous," his friend warned. "If the hegemony learns that we are spreading this story, they will punish us." "They punish us anyway," Zek Tor replied. "At least this way, we might have hope." The story of the Defiant spread through the Keturi population like a virus. Within days, every member of their species had heard about the human ship that refused to surrender. They began asking questions that they had not dared to ask for 50 years. If humans could fight back, why could they not? If the hegemony could be hurt, why were they still slaves? If one small ship could destroy 2 enemy vessels, what could an entire planet do if it rebelled? Similar conversations were happening on other conquered worlds. The hegemony had built their empire on the idea that resistance was hopeless. But the Defiant had proved that idea wrong. Admiral Vex Thalen was beginning to understand the problem. He was no longer commanding from the front lines, having been recalled to the hegemony capital for questioning. The loss of 2 ships to a single human destroyer was seen as a major failure by his superiors. "Explain to me how this happened," demanded Supreme Commander Kral Vex. Kral Vex was the leader of the entire hegemony military, and he was not pleased with the news from human space. "The humans fought differently than other species," Vex Thalen said. "They refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. They used tactics that we have never seen before." "That is not an explanation," Kral Vex said angrily. "That is an excuse. Our ships are superior to anything humans can build. Our shields are perfect. Our weapons are unmatched. How did they hurt us?" Vex Thalen had been asking himself the same question. "I believe they found a weakness in our shield technology. Something very small, but real." "Impossible. Our shields have been tested against every known weapon type." 6 months after the battle at Kepler Station, the war had changed completely. The hegemony fleet had reached Earth as planned, but the battle that followed was nothing like what Admiral Vex Thalen expected. Fleet Admiral Park High stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the enemy fleet approach Earth. 200 hegemony ships moved in perfect formation, their red hulls gleaming in the light of Sol. It was an impressive sight, designed to make enemies surrender before the fighting even began. But Park High was not impressed. She had 43 human ships under her command, all equipped with the weapons modifications that Lieutenant Kim Soo had developed. More importantly, every crew member had heard the story of the Defiant. They knew that the enemy could be hurt, and they were ready to prove it again. "Admiral," said Captain Seo Jun from the Retribution, "all ships report ready for battle. The new weapons are charged and operational." "Good," Park Hae replied. "Remember, we are not just fighting for Earth. We are fighting to show the galaxy that freedom is worth any price. The human fleet moved to intercept the hegemony forces. Park Hay had studied the battle data from Kepler Station many times. She understood that humans could not win a traditional battle against superior numbers and technology, but they did not need to win traditionally. They just needed to refuse to lose. Admiral Vex Thalan commanded the hegemony fleet from his new flagship, the Supremacy. He had been given a chance to redeem himself by conquering Earth. This time, he would not underestimate the humans. All ships, attack formation, he ordered. Destroy the human fleet quickly before they can use their shield-breaking tactics. The hegemony ships spread out and began moving toward the human formation. Their plasma cannons charged with deadly energy, and their shields shimmered like jewels in space. But as they closed the distance, something unexpected happened. Instead of waiting to be attacked, the human fleet split into small groups and began moving in different directions. Each group consisted of 3 or 4 ships, and they were all heading toward different parts of the enemy formation. "What are they doing?" Vex Thalan asked his tactical officer. "Unknown, Admiral. Their formation makes no tactical sense. They are dividing their forces against a superior enemy." Vex Thalan watched the human ships with growing concern. This was not how space battles were supposed to work. Normally, fleets stayed together to concentrate their firepower. By splitting up, the humans were making themselves vulnerable to defeat in detail, unless they had a different plan. The first human group reached the edge of the hegemony formation and immediately began their attack. 4 human ships focused all their firepower on a single enemy vessel, using the sustained bombardment technique that the Defiant had discovered. The hegemony ship's shields flickered and failed. Human weapons broke through and tore into the alien hull. Within minutes, the enemy vessel was destroyed. But the human ships did not stop there. Instead of retreating or celebrating, they immediately moved to the next enemy ship and began the same attack pattern. "Impossible," Vex Thalan said. "How are they breaking our shields so quickly?" "They have refined their technique, Admiral," his tactical officer reported. "They are coordinating their attacks perfectly. Each group is destroying our ships one by one." Vex Thalan realized that the humans had learned from the Defiant's sacrifice. They were not trying to fight a traditional battle. Instead, they were using hit-and-run tactics, focusing overwhelming firepower on single targets before moving to the next one. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human groups," he ordered. "Destroy them before they can hurt more of our vessels." The hegemony fleet began targeting the small human formations. Their plasma cannons lit up space as they fired at the fast-moving enemy ships. Several human vessels were hit and destroyed, but the others kept fighting. Captain Seo Jun commanded one of the attack groups from the bridge of the Retribution. His ships had just destroyed their second enemy vessel when the hegemony began focusing fire on them. "Captain, we are taking heavy damage," reported his engineering officer. "Shields are down to 30%. "Keep attacking," Seo Jun ordered. "We are not done yet." The Retribution and its 3 companion ships continued their assault on the next hegemony vessel. Plasma beams from other enemy ships struck them repeatedly, but they did not retreat. When the enemy shields finally failed, they poured all their remaining firepower into the target. The 3rd hegemony ship exploded just as the Retribution's hull began to crack under enemy fire. But even as his ship was dying around him, Seo Jun ordered his fleet to move toward the next target. "Sir," said his tactical officer, "we cannot survive another attack. The ship is falling apart." "Then we make this one count," Seo Jun replied. The SAWS, Retribution, burning and trailing debris, led its group toward a 4th enemy ship. They never reached it. Concentrated fire from 5 hegemony vessels tore the human ships apart, but their sacrifice had destroyed 3 enemy vessels and inspired the other human groups to keep fighting. Admiral Vex Thalan watched his fleet being torn apart by an enemy that refused to fight according to the rules. Every time he destroyed a human group, Another one would attack from a different direction. The humans seemed to care nothing for their own survival, only for hurting the enemy as much as possible. "Admiral, we have lost 30 ships," his tactical officer reported. "The humans have lost 21. At this rate, they will destroy our entire fleet." "That is impossible," Vex Thalan said. "We outnumber them 5-1. "Yes, sir. But they are not fighting to win. They are fighting to hurt us as much as possible before they die." Vex Thalan finally understood what made humans different from every other species the hegemony had conquered. Other aliens fought to survive. They retreated when the battle turned against them, and they surrendered when defeat became certain. But humans fought for something more important than survival. They fought for the idea that freedom was worth any price, including death. This made them incredibly dangerous, because they could not be intimidated or discouraged by losses. As the battle continued, reports began reaching Vex Thalan about problems in other parts of the hegemony. The story of the Defiant had spread throughout the conquered territories, and several species were beginning to rebel. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "we are receiving reports from Keturah Prime. The Keturi have seized control of 3 cities and are demanding independence." "What about the garrison forces?" "The Keturi soldiers in our army have joined the rebellion. They are using their knowledge of our tactics against us." Vex Thalan felt a cold fear in his chest. The hegemony's greatest strength was that conquered species served in their military. It gave them unlimited manpower and prevented rebellions. But if those same soldiers turned against them, the empire would collapse. "Sir, more reports coming in," the communications officer continued. "Rebellions on 6 different worlds. The conquered species are coordinating their attacks." Park Hay received the same reports on her flagship. The plan that Dr. Lee Na had suggested was working. The story of human resistance had inspired other species to fight for their freedom. "Admiral," said her tactical officer, "the enemy fleet is beginning to retreat." Park Hay looked at her tactical display. The hegemony had lost almost half their ships, and the survivors were pulling back from Earth. For the first time in 3 centuries, their fleet was running away from a battle. "All ships, pursue and destroy," she ordered. "Do not let them escape." The remaining human ships chased the retreating hegemony fleet. Even though they were outnumbered and outgunned, they continued attacking. Every human vessel that was destroyed took at least 1 enemy ship with it. By the end of the day, the hegemony fleet was completely destroyed. Only a handful of alien ships escaped, and they were too damaged to fight effectively. The most powerful military force in the galaxy had been beaten by an enemy that simply refused to give up. Admiral Vex Thalan found himself in command of one of the few surviving ships. As he watched Earth growing smaller on his view screen, he thought about the battle he had just lost. The humans had not defeated him with superior technology or clever tactics. They had beaten him with something much simpler and much more powerful, the absolute refusal to surrender. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "what are your orders?" Vex Thalan thought about this question for a long time. He could try to regroup and attack again. He could call for reinforcements from the hegemony capital. He could attempt to rebuild his fleet and continue the war. But what would be the point? The humans had shown the galaxy that the hegemony could be beaten. Rebellions were spreading throughout. The empire, the foundation of fear and inevitability that the hegemony was built on, had been shattered. "Set course for the capital," Vex Thalan said finally. "We need to inform the Supreme Commander that the war is over." "Sir?" "The humans have won," Vex Thalan explained. "Not because they destroyed our ships, but because they have destroyed our mystique. Every species in the galaxy now knows that we can be beaten. The Empire will fall within a year." As the damaged hegemony ships limped away from Earth, Admiral Park Hay began coordinating with the rebel forces on the conquered worlds. The humans would provide weapons and tactical support to any species that wanted to fight for their freedom. The war was not completely over.